Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be looking at something kind of interesting, something that might seem a little bit out of place maybe in our cloud-centric world.
Oh.
We're going to be talking about the role of local storage in, 2025. It's found this fascinating Korean article titled, Advantages of Local Storage Over the Cloud. And let me tell you, it makes a pretty compelling case for, why you might want to hang on to those hard drives.
Interesting.
So get ready, everybody, because we are going to dive deep today as we try to figure out if and how local storage could fit into, your data strategy.
It's easy to just think that the cloud is just taken over, right? But I think, as we'll uncover today, there's more to the story.
Yeah.
The article really emphasizes the risk of just, putting all your eggs in one basket, the cloud basket.
Yeah, I hear that. I've definitely been guilty of that myself, just assuming cloud is the way to go. But this article makes a great point about speed and data availability. Specifically when it comes to recovering large amounts of data from the cloud, apparently it can be a real pain.
Yeah, and that's a huge deal, especially for businesses.
Right.
Think about it. Downtime equals lost revenue. So the speed of recovery, that's not just a technical consideration.
Right.
It's like a business imperative.
Okay, but hold on. This is where it gets a little ironic. The article talks about Backblaze,
Yeah.
which is a cloud backup company.
Yeah.
And guess what?
What?
They offer a service where they literally ship you physical hard drives with your data for faster recovery.
Wow.
It's like the cloud, admitting it needs a little help from its old school cousin,
Right. What's so fascinating about this is that it highlights a bigger issue, the issue of internet dependency. What happens when your internet connection goes down?
Oh, yeah.
With local storage, you still have access to your data.
Right.
It's like having a backup plan for your backup plan.
It's like those times when a major cloud provider has an outage, like what happened with CloudStrike and AWS.
Yeah.
Even the giants aren't invincible.
Exactly. These outages, even if they're temporary, they really they underscore how relying only on the cloud can leave you vulnerable.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about having a more diversified approach.
So we've got speed and availability, but the article also dives into security and compliance.
Okay.
It really emphasizes how local storage gives you more control, more privacy.
And understanding the why behind that is key.
Yeah.
With local storage, you're the one setting the security, you're managing those access controls, you're not depending on a third party's policies, which, let's be honest, can change pretty quickly.
That makes me think about GDPR.
Yeah.
The General Data Protection Regulation. Data location has huge legal implications, especially in Europe.
Absolutely. Even if you're not based in Europe, if you're storing data on a European server, you're subject to their laws. It can be a real minefield to navigate.
Yeah.
The article even mentioned this story about the CEO of Macquarie Technology Group, who highlighted some of these gotchas that people might not even realize.
It's like there's this whole hidden layer of complexity that we need to be aware of when we're choosing where to store our data.
Exactly. And speaking of complexity, let's talk about data breaches.
Yeah, that's a big one. And, the article points out that that it's not that cloud security is inherently bad.
Right.
But because cloud providers, they hold so much data, they become massive targets for hackers.
It's like the saying, where there's honey, there are bees.
Yeah.
That concentration of data in the cloud, it makes it incredibly attractive to cybercriminals.
And think about the long-term impact of some of these breaches.
Yeah.
Remember the LastPass breach where hackers got into user password vaults?
Uh-huh.
People were still having their crypto stolen in 2024 because of that.
Wow. And even breaches that seem, unrelated, they can highlight how interconnected data risks are in the cloud. Take that Snowflake and Ticketmaster breach. Shows how one weak link can affect the whole system.
So it sounds like the article is saying local storage isn't about, replacing the cloud. It's about working alongside it.
Precisely. It's about creating a more balanced and resilient data strategy.
Right.
The key takeaway is to really consider your individual data needs.
So what should people be thinking about when they're making these decisions? What are the key factors?
Ask yourself, how sensitive is this information?
Okay.
How quickly do I need to be able to access it in case of an emergency? Are there any specific regulations I need to comply with?
Yeah.
These are all questions that can help you figure out which data might be better suited for local storage.
It's like creating a data map and strategically placing each piece based on its importance and sensitivity.
Exactly. And here's another thing to consider. Local storage, it doesn't have to mean those clunky external hard drives from the past.
Right. The article talked about some pretty cool modern options like NAS drives, which are kind of like your own personal cloud at home.
That's right. And they offer a lot more control compared to a public cloud service.
They also mentioned portable SSDs. They're tiny but super fast.
Imagine that, all your data in your pocket.
Yeah. Technology has come a long way, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And it sounds like local storage is evolving right alongside it.
It certainly is. But we need to remember that local storage comes with its own set of considerations.
Right, of course.
Okay, what kind of things are we talking about?
Well, security is paramount. Just because you have physical control over the device, it doesn't mean you can forget about security measures.
So, strong passwords, encryption, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. And don't forget about physical security, too. If you're storing sensitive information locally, you need to protect the device itself from theft or damage.
And what about backing up the backup? Should people have multiple copies of their local storage, just in case something happens to the original?
That's always a good practice, especially for critical data. You could have one local copy and another copy stored offsite, maybe at a trusted friend's house or a safety deposit box.
So it's like the old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, but apply it to your local storage as well. Diversification is key.
You got it. But here's something else to think about. Are there situations where the cloud might actually be a better choice than local storage?
That's a good question. I mean, the cloud it's super convenient for sharing files, accessing them from anywhere.
Exactly. If you're constantly collaborating on large files or you need access to your data from multiple locations, the cloud's probably going to be a better fit.
So it's not about one being better than the other.
Yeah.
It's about choosing the right tool for the job.
Right.
And for some jobs, the cloud is still the reigning champ.
Absolutely. But it's important to remember that local storage, it still has a vital role to play.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to security, control, peace of mind. And you know what? It can even save you some money in the long run.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more about that.
Well, cloud storage can be very affordable for small amounts of data, but as your needs grow, the costs can really add up. Local storage can be a much more cost-effective option over time, especially if you're not constantly accessing or sharing large files.
So it's like anything else, right?
Yeah.
If you got weigh the pros and cons.
Exactly.
Figure out what makes sense for your situation.
But I think the bigger question here is, in a world that's becoming increasingly reliant on the cloud, does local storage even have a future?
Ooh, that's a good one. Is it destined to become, obsolete?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there still hope for our hard drives?
Well, despite the cloud's growing popularity, I don't think local storage is going away anytime soon.
Oh, okay.
And there are a few reasons for that.
Okay, I'm all ears. Why are you so confident in the future of local storage?
Well, for one thing, security and privacy concerns are only going to become more important. As we become more dependent on digital technologies, local storage gives you a level of control, a level of autonomy that you just can't get with the cloud.
So it's like a counter movement, like a pushback against the all-encompassing nature of the cloud.
In a way, yes. People are starting to realize how valuable their data is, and they want more say in how it's stored, how it's accessed.
And that desire for control is driving innovation in the local storage space, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, we're seeing new technologies, new solutions popping up all the time.
NAS drives are becoming more powerful, more user-friendly.
Right.
Portable SSDs are shrinking in size but expanding in capacity.
Wow.
And we're even seeing new encryption and security protocols that make local storage even more secure.
So it's not just about clinging to the past.
Exactly.
It's about adapting and evolving to meet the changing needs of data storage, right?
Precisely. Local storage is going through a renaissance, and I believe it's going to continue to play a vital role in our data ecosystem for many years to come.
That's actually really exciting. It's not about local storage versus the cloud. It's about finding the right balance, the right mix of solutions that work for each person or organization.
You nailed it. The future of data storage is hybrid, which ultimately gives us more options, more flexibility, and more control over our digital lives.
Absolutely. So to our listeners out there, don't write off local storage just yet. Do your own research, explore the possibilities, and see how it might fit into your overall data strategy.
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
Indeed. It's an exploration worth taking.
It's kind of refreshing, to hear that local storage still has a place in our digital world. I feel like everybody's been so quick to jump on the cloud bandwagon
I agree.
that we've kind of forgotten about the basics.
Yeah, it's like we've been so focused on the shiny new thing that we've overlooked the value of what we already have.
Exactly. And speaking of value, you mentioned earlier that that local storage can actually save you money. I'm kind of curious to learn more about that.
Well, think about it this way. Cloud storage, it can be really affordable when you're just starting out, but those monthly fees, they can really start to add up, especially as your storage needs grow.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like those subscription services, right?
Yeah.
That seem cheap at first, but then you realize you're spending a small fortune every year.
Right. With local storage, you make a one-time investment. You buy a hard drive or a NAS device, and then you're pretty much set. You don't have those recurring costs, hanging over your head.
So for people who are, maybe on a tight budget or just want more control over their spending, it sounds like local storage could be a really attractive option.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the money. There's also the issue of data ownership. When you store your data in the cloud, you're essentially entrusting it to, well, a third-party company.
So you're saying that with local storage, you have more autonomy over your data.
Precisely. You're not subject to the terms and conditions of a cloud provider, which, we all know can change at any time. You have complete control over who has access to your data, how it's used.
That's a really important point. It's like the difference between renting an apartment and owning a house. When you own your data, you have more freedom, more flexibility.
Exactly, and that peace of mind, it can be priceless, especially if you're dealing with sensitive information.
It's funny, we started this conversation talking about how the cloud has made everything so convenient. But now we're kind of circling back to this idea that maybe some things are better kept, closer to home.
It's all about finding the right balance, right?
Yeah.
The cloud has its strengths, but local storage, it offers some unique advantages that are still very relevant today.
It's like we're rediscovering the value of self-reliance in a world that's become increasingly dependent on technology.
I like that way of putting it. It's about taking ownership of our digital lives, making conscious choices about how we manage our data.
And that brings us back to this idea of digital self-reliance that you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like in a practical sense?
Well, I think it starts with understanding where your data lives, how it's protected, who has access to it. It's about being proactive, taking steps to ensure that your data is safe and secure.
So it's not about disconnecting from the cloud entirely. It's about using it more strategically, more intentionally.
Exactly. It's about having a diversified data strategy that includes both cloud and local storage.
Yeah.
It's about knowing your options, choosing the right tools for the job.
I think a lot of people might be intimidated by the idea of managing their own data. It can seem really, technical and complicated.
I understand that concern, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. There are plenty of resources available to help you learn the basics. And as we've discussed, there are a lot of user-friendly local storage solutions out there that make it easier than ever to take control of your data.
So what would you say is the first step for someone who wants to become more, digitally self-reliant?
I would start by conducting a data audit.
Okay.
Make a list of all the types of data you store and where it's currently located. Then ask yourself some key questions.
Okay, like what?
Well, for each piece of data, ask yourself, how sensitive is this information? How often do I access it? Who needs to have access to it? And how important is it that I have complete control over it?
It's like taking inventory of your digital assets and figuring out which ones need the most protection.
Precisely. And once you have a clear understanding of your data landscape, you can start exploring different storage options.
Right.
Developing a strategy that aligns with your needs, your values.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a much better understanding of the role of local storage in today's digital world.
I'm glad to hear that. It's an important topic that often gets overlooked.
And speaking of overlooked topics, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the future of local storage. Do you think it will continue to evolve, to adapt, or is it eventually going to be swallowed up by the cloud?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's It's hard to say for sure what the future holds, but if I had to make a prediction, I'd say that local storage it's here to stay.
Really? Why is that?
Well, for one thing, there's a growing awareness of the importance of data privacy and security. People are becoming more concerned about, who has access to their data, how it's being used.
So you're saying that this trend towards data privacy could actually benefit local storage?
Absolutely. Local storage gives you a level of control that you just can't get with the cloud. And as data privacy concerns continue to grow, I think we're going to see more and more people turning to local storage solutions.
That makes sense. It's like we're seeing a shift in the pendulum. We went through this period of cloud euphoria. Everybody was rushing to put everything online.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to realize that maybe some things are better kept, closer to home.
Exactly. And that's not to say that the cloud is going away, It still has a lot to offer in terms of convenience and accessibility.
Right.
But I think we're going to see a more balanced approach to data storage in the future, where people use a combination of cloud and local storage depending on, their needs and their priorities.
So it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about finding the right mix of solutions that work best for you.
Precisely. It's about having the freedom and flexibility to manage your data in a way that makes you feel, comfortable and secure.
And that's a really empowering message. It's about taking control of our digital lives and making informed choices about how we manage our data.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's about finding the right balance between, convenience, security, peace of mind.
We've talked a lot about the practical side of local storage,
Yeah.
like cost savings, data security.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a philosophical element to this conversation.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that.
Well, it seems like there's this growing sense of unease, about how much of our lives we've entrusted to big tech companies.
Yeah.
We rely on them for everything, from
Yeah.
communication to entertainment to storing our most personal information. And I think some people are starting to question whether that level of dependence is healthy.
That's a really insightful observation. It's like we've become so accustomed to the convenience of these services that we haven't fully considered the potential downsides.
Exactly. And I think local storage, in a way, it represents a pushback against that trend.
Right.
It's about taking back some of that control.
Right.
About reclaiming ownership of our data, of our digital lives.
I love that perspective. It's about asserting our independence in a world that's becoming increasingly interconnected. It's about remembering that we have a choice in how we manage our digital footprint.
And that choice it's empowering.
Yeah, really.
It's about taking a stand and saying, I'm not just going to blindly hand over my data. I'm going to make conscious decisions about how it's stored, how it's protected.
That's the spirit of digital self-reliance.
Yeah.
It's about being informed, being proactive, and taking steps to ensure that your data is treated with the respect and the care that it deserves.
We've talked about the practical benefits of local storage, like
Sure.
cost savings, data security. But I think what you're describing here is something much deeper. It's about reclaiming a sense of agency in a world that can feel, increasingly out of our control.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about taking ownership of our digital lives,
Yeah.
shaping them in a way that aligns with our values and our priorities.
I think that's a really powerful message to leave our listeners with. It's not just about choosing the right hard drive or the best cloud storage plan.
Yeah.
It's about taking a step back and thinking about what kind of digital future we want to create for ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. It's about being mindful, being deliberate, and taking control of our digital destiny.
And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the pros and cons of local storage, the importance of data security, and the broader philosophical implications of managing our digital lives.
It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope our listeners have gained some valuable insights that they can apply to their own data storage strategies.
Me too. So as we wrap up this episode, let's leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay, I'm ready.
In a world that's constantly pushing us towards the cloud, remember that you have a choice.
Yeah.
You have the power to decide how your data is stored, how it's protected. So take some time to explore your options, weigh the pros and cons, and create a data strategy that gives you peace of mind.
That's great advice. And remember, it's not about choosing one solution over another. It's about finding the right balance that works best for you and your individual needs.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. So to our amazing listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of local storage. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep taking control of your digital lives. It's interesting, isn't it, this shift we've been talking about. We started off, all about the cloud, its dominance.
Yeah.
But we've kind of landed on this idea that it's not about picking sides, really. It's about recognizing we have options, we have choices about our data.
I think you've got it. The cloud has, well, maybe inadvertently sparked this renewed appreciation for, data control.
Yeah.
And that's where local storage really has a chance to shine.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into local storage, I wanted to leave our listeners with something to think about. You brought up this idea of a digital self-reliance earlier.
Uh-huh.
Can you unpack that a bit more? What does that actually look like, in a practical sense?
Well, in a world where we rely so much on these third-party services,
Right.
digital self-reliance is about taking ownership of your data. It's understanding where your data lives, how it's protected, who has access to it. Ultimately, it's about making choices, conscious choices, that align with your values.
So it's not about disconnecting from the cloud entirely. It's about being more mindful, more intentional in how we use it.
Right. Exactly. It's finding that balance. You have the convenience, the scalability of the cloud,
Yeah.
but also the control, the security that local storage offers. It's about a diversified data strategy, minimizing risk, putting you in the driver's seat.
I love that. It's like we're taking back the reins of our digital lives rather than just handing them over to the cloud.
That's a great way to put it. It's about being an active participant, not just a passive consumer.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you, our amazing listeners, to continue your own deep dive into local storage. Maybe it's time to dust off that old hard drive. Check out those new NAS drives we talked about.
Right.
Or simply start thinking about which data just feels more comfortable closer to home.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep diving deep,